So every single week, I go through every single matchup on Saturdays, and I identify the must-start and sit running backs and wide receivers for the particular week of fantasy football. And the reason I do it on Saturday is because it gives us so much time and so much information that we wouldn't have gotten during the week. So today, I am going through every single matchup in Week 12 fantasy football to find the must-start and sit running backs for the week. And I am one of the only fantasy football YouTubers working on the Saturday after Thanksgiving, guys. So please go down there, drop a like on this video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. Let's go ahead and get right into this right now. The first matchup we've got is Tampa Bay at Indianapolis. Now, Jonathan Taylor, I've discussed him over the week. I believe he's locked and loaded as a top 5 running back this week. Top 5. I think Jonathan Taylor's about ready to explode at literally the perfect time for you. Jonathan Taylor, no more Zach Moss. Zach Moss is no longer an issue, no longer a threat to steal any work away from Jonathan Taylor, at least in the significant way. Jonathan Taylor had 20 opportunities plus the last time they played before the bye week. Jonathan Taylor is just in the perfect situation right now, taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You have to start Jonathan Taylor. The guy is, they made the investment on him. They're not messing with Zach Moss anymore. It's Jonathan Taylor season, baby. Rachaad White is flexible. High-end flex option if he plays. He was downgraded to questionable on Friday, and again, this is why we do this on Saturdays. He was downgraded to questionable, leaving a big window of doubt on if he's going to play, because he was downgraded to questionable on Friday. That's not a good thing. That's a bad thing. So I would say the chances of him playing at best are 50-50. So we're going to have to keep an eye on this one throughout the rest of today and heading into tomorrow. And of course, we will discuss it more on the Sunday morning live stream. You don't play Zach Moss, like I said. There's no business playing Zach Moss at this point in fantasy football until we see some drastic, significant changes. New England Patriots at the New York Giants. Probably one of the most anti-fantasy football games there is this weekend, if not at all. Saquon Barkley remains the only guy you could start for sure in this entire matchup. Saquon Barkley is the offense. I've discussed this over the weeks. There's no question that Saquon Barkley is the entire offense here. This is their bread and butter right here. If he doesn't play, if he doesn't do well, the offense is not doing well. It's all reliant on Saquon Barkley. Tommy DeVito had a great game last week against the Commanders. You want to know why? Because Saquon Barkley was the RB1 that week in fantasy football. It's all dependent on Saquon, and this is a good matchup this week. Ramondre Stevenson is flexible. He's nowhere near a must-start for me. Even against a matchup that, on paper, is not bad. I would not call this a bad matchup. Ramondre Stevenson is just part of an offense that stinks. They stink. There's no other way around this one. So Ramondre Stevenson, flexible option for sure. Not someone I'm going to tell my audience, you got to play this guy over a guy like Kyren Williams, who we'll discuss later. Matt Breida, Zeke Elliott, never even consider those two options right there, unless one of them gets hurt. That are the starters in there. Pittsburgh Steelers at the Cincinnati Bengals. Nobody's must start. And Joe Mixon, like I've been growing on him for weeks now. And I said, with Joe Burrow opening things up, taking snaps under center, opening the offense up again, it makes him a legit option for the foreseeable future as far as like a must start goes. No more Joe Burrow, no more upside. That's how I look at it in Cincinnati. Still flexible. Pittsburgh's run defense is no good. And Mixon has gotten in the end zone, I think 4 out of 4 weeks. Mixon is fine, but the upside I don't believe is going to be as high. And then Jaylen Warren, I would say you can flex him over Najee at this point. Now, I think they're both flexible because, as I said earlier in the week, Jaylen Warren was named the starter by Mike Tomlin before the matchup against the Packers several weeks ago. It hasn't changed a thing between their workloads. They're both basically getting the same amount of work still. So it doesn't really make that much of a difference who's the starter by name, because Najee Harris has just been just as involved. Who knows how all this is going to change without Matt Canada there? I'm guessing Jaylen Warren and Najee are still going to be sharing a lot of duties, and that's why I call Najee my underdog running back flex option of the week. And then everybody else is irrelevant in this matchup. Carolina at the Tennessee Titans here. I said this earlier this week as well. Derrick Henry is a top 10 running back for me this week, but I said this as well. Make no mistake, this is Derrick Henry's last chance before I declare him, in my book, someone who's, it's over. It's over for him. If he can't perform at a top 10 level against the Carolina Panthers, we've got major issues that are likely not going to be solved, at the very least, this year. Derrick Henry's last chance is against the Carolina Panthers at home, because every other running back has ripped them to shreds. Watching this one, big time for Derrick Henry's sake. But I think he can be absolutely started, because I am hedging my bet on Derrick Henry this week. Not against him, I'm hedging it on him. If you must torture yourself with a Carolina Panthers running back, they're flexible just because of workload. Chuba Hubbard is still seeing the majority of the work in this backfield, and he's also the most efficient. So if you're picking a Carolina Panthers running back, it should be Chuba Hubbard. Miles Sanders is one of the deepest shots you could take. I mean, he got more volume last week and was more efficient, but the season has been just an absolute bomb for Miles Sanders. I would never endorse my audience playing him. That's why I have Tyjae Spears as a more flexible guy. Based on what teams have done against the Carolina Panthers with their running backs, I think you could possibly start Tyjae Spears if you wanted to. Certainly over Miles Sanders. I would prefer Chuba just because Chuba probably is going to be the lead back. But Tyjae Spears, if he gets 10 touches, I'd rather have his 10 touches over Miles Sanders. That's the way we need to look at things. And then everybody else, of course, not relevant. Jacksonville Jaguars at the Houston Texans here. Travis Etienne is still a must start. And I get it. It's been a bad couple of weeks for him, really. I've said it this week. I believe this is a Travis Etienne type of game. I think actually more than the passing game, Travis Etienne's going to just absolutely run through the Texans. Texans have a bad track record against Travis Etienne. A bad track record against Derrick Henry in division. The Texans are better this year, no doubt about it. I think Travis Etienne is having a massive rebound game, and I want my audience to play him, and don't be worried about it, because the last 2 weeks have been what they've been. This is a much better matchup than what he's seen the past several weeks. Devin Singletary, I've voiced my issues and concerns with him on how I'm not able to fully buy into this guy. And I acknowledge that he is a good start. I think Devin Singletary is a high-end flex option against Jacksonville's defense, who is tough. By the way, don't take San Francisco game as a referendum on what the Jags defense is. They're a good defense here. And Devin Singletary, up until 2 weeks ago, was not even relevant. And it's not only because he was the backup to Dameon Pierce. This team hasn't established any run game up until 2 weeks ago. I can't buy in. If I see another great performance, then we'll have a different discussion. But Tank Bigsby, don't start him. And Dameon Pierce is questionable. He's been out the past several games. Even if he plays, nobody cares. Dameon Pierce, at this point, if you got him, just drop the guy. New Orleans Saints at the Atlanta Falcons here. Alvin Kamara, Bijan Robinson, fire them both up. I've got a lot of optimism for this matchup in the running backs room. Alvin Kamara, the past 2 weeks before the bye week, 9 carries. And I was like, why is that? I was trying to find anything I could to identify what the issue was here. I really couldn't find anything, to be honest with you. I was looking for injuries, maybe. I couldn't see anything on this one. Maybe it's the NFC South thing where they just don't report injuries. I don't know. I'm mostly just joking, but it's like, it doesn't make a lot of sense why he was getting 9 carries after he was handling like 30 opportunities as soon as he got back, like that. So maybe it's a workload thing. They're just trying to balance it a little bit more. I think in this matchup against the Falcons, he's back to being a fantasy superstar. And Bijan Robinson, I'm getting bigger on throughout the week. Before I started filming this earlier today, again, why we film this on Saturdays is because before I turned on the camera, I saw that Bijan Robinson is about to get a lot more work. Apparently, the report I read is that they're very impressed. He's exceeded their expectations, which, no duh. But their coaching staff is starting to see as well. He's expected to get a massive workload versus the Saints. I don't love the matchup. I love the player, and if the player gets 20 plus opportunities, you're absolutely starting him. Let's bank on Bijan Robinson together. He's a must-start guy this week. And you can't play anybody else. Kendre Miller, Jamal Williams, irrelevant. And Tyler Algier, not irrelevant, I wouldn't say. But at this point, if Bijan Robinson handles 20 plus carries and Algier gets 5, it's not worth it at all. Guy's not efficient enough. Los Angeles Rams at the Arizona Cardinals here. Kyren Williams, I believe, is must start. Now, I did also see before I started filming that Sean McVay said that he was going to be smart with Kyren's workload and take some snaps out of his game. It's concerning for sure when you hear a coach say that. I don't know how much it's going to really affect him, though. And of course, we don't know exactly what he means by less snaps. That could mean he gets 30% of the work. That could mean he gets 70%. Who knows exactly what that means? That's kind of my point here, is that I don't want us to overreact on this one because Kyren Williams has been fantastic in fantasy this year. The matchup is fantastic. You play things, trust your eyes. What you've seen from him, the matchup that you see, trust your eyes on this one. I will be playing Kyren Williams for sure. James Conner is also a must start. The matchup is fantastic. The Rams defense sucks. Capital S sucks. I get it. They beat a divisional opponent last week in Seattle. Big deal. It's a divisional game. And again, this is a divisional game as well. James Conner, to me, when you look at what he's done since he's returned with Kyler Murray, he's been efficient. The guy has been efficient. He just hasn't found the end zone yet. It could happen any week, and I would not be surprised one bit if it happened this week. And you combine what he's done on the ground, 70, 80 yards, with a touchdown, that's a really good week. Start James Conner for sure. Royce Freeman, I get it. Like I said, Kyren Williams maybe relinquishes snaps to him. I'm not doing it. I'm just not doing it here. I don't see the upside with limited touches. Because at best, I see him getting 30% of the work. 30% of the snaps. That's at best. I just wouldn't do it. I don't think the upside is high enough with the player. Amari DeMercado, Keontae Ingram, no. Don't do it. Cleveland Browns at the Denver Broncos here. Javonte Williams is the only one who's must start. And I want to say this really quick. Javonte went in the wrong direction last week. He had two straight performances, 25 plus opportunities, and went back down and had like less than 15 opportunities. That's not a good thing. Now, I don't like this matchup either. But Javonte Williams, to me, when you look at it analytically, the analytics say that they need to use him more, and I don't know if they care about analytics or not. But to me, if I'm an NFL coach, I look at this and I say, Javonte Williams has clearly been the most effective back for us. Let's just get him more. Let's just get him more work. Don't overthink this one. That's what I'm banking on here against the Cleveland Browns. But he's right on the border, as is Jerome Ford. Jerome Ford, I've seen, he's expected to get a big workload this week against the Broncos. And Jerome Ford's been a stud. Like, I honestly have been told I'm underestimating Jerome Ford. I can understand that perspective 100%. I may very well be. And if he has another great week, I'll definitely have to reassess this moving into next week. No question about it. But what always gives me the seed of doubt here is that Kareem Hunt does take carries away every week. It's not a week-to-week thing. It's every week you can expect Kareem Hunt to get 10 to 15 opportunities. And a lot of them are at the goal line. Kareem Hunt last week was one of the first weeks that he's been a Brown this year where he didn't have a touchdown. That's the only reason Jerome Ford stays into flex territory. And you don't play either of the Denver Broncos running backs here. Buffalo Bills at the Philadelphia Eagles. One of my favorite matchups of the week. We'll see if Buffalo can keep what they did last week rolling into this week here, because on paper, it should be an excellent NFL game to watch, and I can't wait to watch it. DeAndre Swift is must start. We all get it at this point. The guy is hyper efficient running behind the best offensive line in the league. He gets targets. He gets all the work out of the backfield. You don't sit DeAndre Swift any week at this point. James Cook, I've seen improvement, and I've been optimistic based on what he did in week 11. I was optimistic after that week. First week without Ken Dorsey, comes in, has one of his best fantasy games of the year. Can he keep that up against the Eagles? I'm not going to say one way or the other, but all I'll say is this. For what it's worth, he played the Jets last week and he did very well. He could do it. The guy's a good player. I've been saying this all year. Good player, efficient, 5 yards per carry. The workload is the issue, and if they can continually get him more work, I like James Cook a lot. He could actually have a playoff surgeons for you at the right time if they just give him more work. So let's right now keep him in high-end flex territory. Latavius Murray, no. Kenneth Gainwell, no. And Leonard Fournette, I've been asked a couple questions about Leonard Fournette. First of all, I never would have advised my audience to pick him up in the first place. I know he's got the big name, but let's look at the past few years. It hasn't been there for him, and he's just not getting enough work. Don't harbor a roster spot for Leonard Fournette right now. Kansas City at Las Vegas. Next matchup here. Both of their starting running backs are must start to me. Isaiah Pacheco, I get it. Like, I've seen a lot of people with concerns about this guy. I continually say this guy is a top 15 to 12 running back. Why? Isaiah Pacheco last week, 19 carries for 89 yards against the Eagles defense. He's got a great offensive line. They're a great offense. He's the number 2 weapon on this offense. If he gets in the end zone with that week last week, we all look at him a lot differently this week. A lot differently. Isaiah Pacheco's must start. The Raiders are not good against the run. Josh Jacobs is still must start too. I voiced my concerns about Josh Jacobs several weeks ago, got a lot of pushback for it, and I can understand it because of what he did last year and what we know he's capable of. Let's look at reality in the face. This guy is barely averaging 3 yards per carry, and he's taking on a tough Kansas City defense. With that said, it's sort of the Saquon Barkley effect. He handles everything out of this backfield. 20 plus opportunities per game is basically the norm. With that kind of opportunity and that kind of big playability he has, you can't sit Josh Jacobs, even in a tough matchup. Everybody else in this matchup is irrelevant. I told you guys, watch out for Jerick McKinnon last week. He's out this week. Don't look at him twice. Baltimore Ravens at Los Angeles Chargers. The Sunday night matchup, and I can tell you, I would start both of these guys. Eckler for the obvious reasons. He's still a top fantasy back. It's been a little bit bad for him recently. I'm still starting him because he's getting all the opportunities. Gus Edwards, at this point, I would say is on the border between flex and must start. I consider him a must start right now, though. The guy has 10 touchdowns already this season, and I think he's had 8 in the past 4 games. The reality here with him is it's tough, and it's going to keep him on the border because of the fact that he's very consistently getting 12 carries. Not bad, but that's not, like, his ceiling is capped. But the good thing right now, they're just finding the end zone, and Gus Edwards is handling the red zone work. Gus Edwards is just in a great situation because he's behind a great offensive line with a great running quarterback who takes, by the way, there's a massive correlation to efficient running backs in fantasy and quarterbacks that can run. Gus Edwards is just in a good spot offensively. If he played for the Panthers, like, obviously this is much different. He plays for the Ravens, guys. At this point, I think he's a must start for me personally because of the touchdown upside. And Keaton Mitchell, I think, is flexible. I wouldn't say go out of your way to do it, but Keaton Mitchell to me is not a bad flex option. I think that he's just in a situation where the volume is the problem. He sees anywhere between 3 to 12 targets on the high end. I don't think that the efficiency is not the problem. It's the volume. So if you want to take a deep shot, he's a deep shot candidate, but I would not say start Keaton Mitchell over someone like Kareem Hunt. Personally, I would start Kareem Hunt. And then Josh Kelly, Justice Hill, no goes. Chicago Bears at the Minnesota Vikings. The Monday night matchup, nobody's must start here. There's no consistency, not enough upside. There's just not enough there for either of these teams at running back. Now, I think that Ty Chandler, Alexander Madison, they're relatively high-end flex options, I would say. Ty Chandler I prefer, and I'll tell you why. Ty Chandler was just as efficient as Alexander Madison last week with less work, which is on the surface not a bad, like it's a bad thing. Head coach O'Connell came out and said we've got to hold on to the ball. And that's a direct shot at Alexander Mattison. He took it earlier this year on him too, because Alexander Mattison has struggled more than any other running back to hold on to the freaking ball. That's why I believe Ty Chandler actually has a legit shot of taking over this backfield. Ty Chandler, I would play him over Alexander Mattison right now. And then Khalil Herbert, I think that he's flexible. He handled the majority of the work last week at the running backs. And Deonta Foreman's also injured. So if you're going to flex the Chicago Bears running back, I would say Khalil Herbert's the guy. I would not say I want either of those guys, any of them. But if you're going to do one, I would say Khalil Herbert because Deonta Foreman's injured and Roschon's involvement has just been, it's not been there. So let me know what questions you need answered for Week 12 fantasy football in the comments below. And if you want to see the top 12 defense rankings for Week 12 fantasy football, click on this video right here.